Welcome to the Fighter Country Innovation Podcast, where we break down barriers, challenge the status quo, and push forward with a mindset on continuous improvement. I'm Technical Sergeant Daniel Fortier, your host, bringing you genuine conversations with people making a difference on the flight line, in the office, and everywhere in between. Here at Luke Air Force Base, we're doing things differently. We've combined CI2, that's continuous improvement and innovation, with the Spark Cell to create Fighter Country Innovation, where big ideas are transformed from whiteboard ideas to real solutions that create impact. Our mission is simple: find, fix, empower. We believe in grassroots efforts that generate undeniable value, because when airmen take ownership of innovation, change isn't just feasible, it's unstoppable. This podcast also focuses on sharing our experiences as your hub for innovation and learning from you, our audience. Your insights and feedback are vital to our continuous improvement and innovation journey. So let's dive in, share ideas, and evolve together. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Fighter Country Innovation Podcast. Today, we have Technical Sergeant Tabitha Au, and this is a story on her about how she went from the F-22 to the F-35, the struggles that she endured, and how she overcame them, and her involvement in innovation. So welcome, Tabby.
Hi, Dan. How are you, sir?
Oh, very, very well. I'm always excited whenever we get to sit down and talk about innovation things and continuous improvement. So thank you for being here.
Oh, of course. I'm excited to share my story. So, as you had mentioned before, I was Raptors for about 10 years. It's the love, the first aircraft is always the love of your life. But that being said, I will say there was a bit of a culture shock coming from the F-22 to the F-35. And it was just, it was sad leaving my airframe, but it was an exciting journey that's honestly led me here. But I'm just going to kind of tell you my frustrations and my struggles that really went into going from the F-22 to the F-35. So coming from the F-22, it takes you anywhere from 6 to 8 years to where you really become proficient in the aircraft. And that's from tech school all the way until you're about a staff, a well-seasoned senior airman and or staff, depending on, how you rank up.
Yeah. And then that's because the aircraft itself is incredibly complex.
Mm-hmm. It's very integrated. They've combined, just like the old Fort Gen, you had your comm nav, you had your, flight controls, things like that, your power. And now that's all combined, and that's why they're called integrated avionics. So I finally was able to get my head on straight, and I was able to actually know the system. And my favorite system was working CNI. I love that system, which ironically enough on the F-22 was in the beginning was the bane of my existence. And I absolutely hated working on it. And now I miss working on that system so much because it was so complex, and there was so many different things that you could have dove down and tried to read theory and understand it and really get to know your aircraft. I still remember the first time I ever troubleshooted an aircraft by myself, and I figured it out, and it was a flight controls issue. And I remember the team before me spent all day trying to figure it out, and reading theory, I was able to pinpoint a specific part on the aircraft, and I was so excited because it was the first time that I had ever figured it out on my own. And that was a lot of fun. But anyway, I digress. I'm so sorry. So coming back from 22 to the 35, so I get to Luke Air Force Base. I'm super excited to learn this airframe. And I start asking the questions for my airmen, like, hey, where do you go to learn this aircraft? They're like, we'll send you through FTD. You'll learn everything you need to know, and we'll also walk you around, and you'll get familiar with the aircraft. So we go through this program. Well, at first I was like, okay, well, maybe you can start having me ask simple questions. So one of the pilots came down with a radio issue, and I was like, oh, okay, did you ask the pilot, like, at what frequency, was he on, and how far out from, and they're like, oh, we don't ask those questions. And I was like, what do you mean you don't ask those questions? Like, that's avionics 101. And they were like, oh, well, we just don't. And I'm like, why not? And they're like, because we don't need to know that. Lockheed Martin has that information, and the jet will tell us what's wrong with the aircraft. And I was like, that's not how troubleshooting works.
Yeah, that's kind of part of troubleshooting. The process of finding out. You ask the questions.
Oh yeah. And it's not to the fault of my airmen. The information just wasn't available to them to learn or ask the questions. So I go to this program in FTD, and we're talking about just different avionics systems. We're learning about different power systems and how the F-35 works. And I would constantly raise my hand going, hey, what's the power? Like, how do you guys troubleshoot this? Does this particular part convert, and where does the conversion go to? Like, where does the electricity go? And they're like, we don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, well, have you guys traced it with schematics? They're like, we don't do that. And I'm like, how do you not have these at your disposal so you know how to troubleshoot wires or figure out power issues or things like that? They're just like, Lockheed Martin will give us that information if need be. And so I was realizing that I was at the mercy of Lockheed Martin more so than I was on the F-22. Because yes, we deal with Lockheed as well, but it didn't seem like it was as tight. So fast forward a little bit more. I get out of this class. The frustration is still there where I feel like I'm not learning my job. I feel like I'm basically an A1C again, going back to Langley Air Force Base, wanting to put, my head in the dirt because I'm just like, I don't know anything. And I just didn't know what to do because I want to be able to troubleshoot this aircraft. So I go and I'm learning the best I can with my airmen. I'm following them around. I'm going through their different courses. I'm trying to understand their red ball process, and I'm finding out that there's no red ball process, and it's basically a glorified turn it on, turn it off, which I get it. Most of the time, that's what these giant flying computers need. But there was no opportunity for my airmen to learn, or for myself to learn, outside of, did you turn it on and turn it off? And that to me wasn't good enough. So then at Luke Air Force Base, excuse me, they have this thing called the LTP program. And it was a lightning technician program. And it was where avionics was learning crew chiefs. And
I remember that.
Yes. But they wouldn't let poor crew chiefs learn avionics, which wasn't fair. So we were learning how to launch and recover aircraft, changing out tires, and doing very unique things. And I did have a little bit of an edge on that because I was on the F-22 demo team at Langley. And so I did alert pad over at Hickam Air Force Base. So avionics would have to launch aircraft. And so I did have a little bit of familiarity of, how to left, right, go forward,
Isn't that normally like a crew chief duty?
It is, yes.
So as avionics, that's pretty cool.
It was very cool. It was, especially at the alert pad, just because at the alert pad, you had two bodies. You had the pilot and then the crew chief avionics. And the crew chief would be doing all the final checks and walkthroughs. Well, I mean, if it's not wires or, more technical than that, like, I don't know what the crew chief is looking for. I mean, I could guess, or at the time I could guess, what they were looking for, but they definitely had a keen eye on knowing what to look for. So I would basically be at the front of the aircraft watching the pilot, but also making sure, that the crew chief was safe at the same time. So, and then when the crew chief gave me the thumbs up, he'd be out the door. Cause I mean, we got to get this thing off the ground in 3 minutes, like quick. So that was an experience. So, my airmen are teaching me how to launch an F-35. I thought it was wild that how they cross over to the other side on the F-35. Cause with the F-22, you walk, in between the nose, or not the nose. Oh God, that's how you get sucked up.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No, you do not. You walk, underneath where the tires are at. So there's an area where you can walk through and, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. But on the F-35, you have to stick your hand out and then walk under the exhaust. And at first I thought my airmen were screwing with me. I was like, there's no way no, because you don't do that on the F-22. You don't walk under the exhaust of the F-22. Like, absolutely not. And they were like, no, seriously. And then I saw like they went back and forth, and it was like them trying to coax, like, I don't know, a scared animal. They're like, you can do it. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I did it. And it was a wild rush. Anyway, we were learning how to do all of that. So jets come down, and they were like, hey, at the time I was Sergeant Wells. They were like, hey, Sergeant Wells, we have a nose tire that needs to get changed. And I was like, all right, I'll learn how to do a nose tire. And so they were like, okay, so go grab all your equipment. So we go grab the toolbox for the nose. It's basically just a tire changing kit. We go grab that. And they were like, oh, dang, the pilot didn't set the nose to 0. And I was like, what? Like, I'm sorry. Yeah, like, because
why is that significant though?
Well, it's significant because the F-22 has a like a scissor link almost to where it keeps it at a 0 degree and it can still turn left and right. But I didn't realize that the F-35 had a computer component as far as like keeping the degrees, if you will. So the pilot actually has to set it to 0 for it to be straight. And they have to do that usually before the aircraft turns off. Anyway, so we had to manually do it. And I was like, okay, so, where's the thing that we got to manually? They're like, well, you got 2 options. You can either kick it straight or we can go get the tow bar. And I was like, well, I don't feel like kicking things. because that just seems weird to me on an aircraft.
And tow bars are big, long, and heavy.
Yes. Yeah, it's like watching. You ever see an animal that tries to like bring a stick into the door that's like way too big for its body?
Yep, I've got a dog, so yes.
Yeah, that was me. And it was quite sad. And it's a 2-man lift, so the poor person on the other side of the tow bar was basically taking the brunt because I was like, why are we carrying this? Because they have like tiny little tires on the end where I'm so used to working with the F-22 ones, which have these giant tires. They're similar to the F-16 ones. And I mean, you pick them up and they're just super light because, leverage and, points of pivot, if you will. Ingenious. So anyway, I'm dragging this thing and you just hear, it is dragging down the flight line. And we're about halfway and I'm like, this is stupid. And I'm like.
Yeah. So for the audience, these tow bars are really heavy. So my career field by trade is ground support equipment. And the tow bars they're one of the pieces of equipment that we fix and maintain, and so I'm very, very familiar with the ins and outs of them and dragging them across. They're a longer version of the CV-22, longer and heavier version of the CV-22 tow bar.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Are they the ones that they use on the Navy ship?
Mm-hmm.
They are? Okay, yeah. Because I was just like, what are we doing? Like, why is the Air Force using Navy stuff? And this is honestly the first time that I've had to deal with an airframe where it's joint. So it makes sense that we have like Navy products and, some Navy things. And anyway, so I was like, this is stupid. So we get there and we hook up this tow bar and I'm like, okay, so now what do we do? And they're like, okay, well now what we do, because again, 2-man lift and we never divert from TO. Ever. They're like, okay, you need to move it and we're going to tell you when to stop. So there's 3 to 4 people, 2 people like moving the bar and then 1 other person, but it's usually, 4. Anyway, there was a crowd assembling because, why not see the tech sergeant sweat? And I was like, okay, so I'm trying to move this thing and they're like, okay, now come over here and look what we're talking about. And I'm like, okay, so now I run over there and I see that it's at 0. And they're like, now you need to put in Thor's hammer, which is just like this tiny little hammer that keeps it aligned and keeps it locked in place. And that's fine. But it got me to thinking, like, I was like, wow, like what happens if there was only 2 people? 1, you'd be violating TO. And again, we never go against TO.
Definitely not.
We would never. And so now I'm thinking, okay, now these poor people have to pick this up. And like, I'm old by military standards. Like my back hurts, like
seasoned.
Yeah, seasoned. There we go. So I was like, I don't know how people are doing this. Like this is dumb. So then I was like, well, what's the kicking method? And they're like, we literally sit down on the ground and we kick. So I was like, okay, well, let's figure what that looks like. So they were like, okay, do you really want to learn? And I was like, I do. So what they did is they took Thor's hammer out and then they adjusted the tire to where it was not in 0 anymore. And they were like, all right, this is how you do it. And I was like, this is stupid because it literally radiated pain from my knee to my hip. And I was just like, why? And they're like, oh, be careful. You don't slip and hit your partner. And I was like, hit him where? And they were like, Where do you think? And I was like, oh no, like that would be terrible. So we get it straight. By now there's a crowd of them. I want to say there was like 8.
And this whole time, how long is this process taking?
Oh, just to get the nose tire aligned the first time, I would say it took about 15 to 30 minutes just to go from getting the tow bar, because our tow team wasn't available. And oh yeah, that's the other thing too. If your tow team was towing something, you had to use the alternative method, aka kicking. And so that to me was just like, this is stupid. Like now we're waiting on another team. Now, God forbid we had another sortie or we had an RCA, which is a rapid crew swap, and we needed to change this tire like ASAP. Obviously they wouldn't be teaching me. I think this was, I don't think that aircraft was in the next lineup. So I think that's why they were taking so much time with me, which was fine, which I appreciate because, honestly, to have airmen come down to the level and teach their tech sergeant how to do their job, like that sounds like a really weird concept. Like if anything, it should be reversed. But it was a very humbling experience and also very rewarding because it made me feel like my airmen do want me to succeed, regardless of me being a tech sergeant. So it was a great time. Anyway, by this point, my airmen are laughing at me, which is fine. Like, I get it. Like, I'm supposed to be the technical expert. I'm supposed to know how to do this.
But you're new to the airframe, and this is a new process that, frankly, it doesn't make sense because it is, it's something that this whole process should had already have had a solution in place.
Theoretically. I mean, but the solution in place was grab the tow bar, kick it. And I'm like, there has to be something better.
That's incredibly inefficient.
It is. So, I'm sitting there and we're changing out this tire. Like my airmen are showing me, and I'm just looking at them, and I'm like, these are some bigger dudes. So this would be an easier task for them. But I was like looking at like all the other like smaller individuals, and I'm like, how do they do this by themselves? And so I was like, there has to be an easier way. And of course, getting laughed at by your airmen is, something you'll never forget. And, I'm really glad that they saw that it's okay. No matter what rank you're at, you can always learn something and still struggle by learning. So, anyway, fast forward again. I think I'm in another FTD class, and they're talking, I think it's Core 54. We're in Core 54, which is a class where they teach you how to basically crew chief.
Okay.
And it's a mandatory class at the time. And I'm going through this, and they're talking about tire changes. And I remember my idea that I had, and it wasn't drawn on paper yet. Like I was still like very in the concept of trying to understand and figure out how to make lives easier. And I was like, why not do like a yoke and a pitchfork, if you will? It would just fit on the F-35. So I kind of doodle up a sketch, and I was like, hey, like, I think this may be able to help individuals. And I held on it for quite some time, went through the course, and then that's when I got blessed to go and work with basically their mod team, if you will. And I was working with different crew chiefs, and I was learning different things about the aircraft. I took off a rudder. I never thought in my years of avionics I would be taking off a rudder.
No, what's the mod team?
The mod team is basically like where they would go through and they would do modifications on the aircraft, or they would do any like heavy level maintenance that the aircraft would be down for a certain amount of time. So instead of taking it down for a week, doing maintenance, and then going, oh crap, we need to do another mod, or we need to have a heavier maintenance. So they would take the aircraft down for about 2 to 3 weeks. We would basically do everything that we could on this aircraft, whether it be modifications, heavy maintenance, things like that. So we were changing out these things called the lollipops, which is basically like hookup connection points. I don't know if those are the technical terms, but that's what my crew chiefs taught me. So that's what I'm going to kind of run with.
It's catchy, so they remember.
Yeah. Oh, well, I remembered. And so we're changing these out because they had some wear on them. And I think at the time I was 12 years in. I never thought I would be taking out a rudder that wasn't going to be involved, electrically, like troubleshooting. So it was a really cool experience to be able to like have a crane hovering over me as this thing is like suspended in the air. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But, play it cool. And so that was a lot of fun. And my pro super noticed that I was handling the team and like I was really running the team. Really, the guys were doing all the heavy lifting. They were teaching me. I was just going, hey, today, like this is due. So this is what we're going to do. I was basically managing. But really, my guys were quite literally doing all the heavy lifting and teaching me along the way. So credit all goes to them. And I will be forever grateful for that team. And then I was blessed to go be an expediter. So at this point, I almost forgot about the idea until I became an expediter, and I was like, dang, like my airmen are still struggling. Like I would watch new airmen who were coming in from tech school, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And I remembered the pain and the struggle. So then that's when I went up to Fighter Country Innovation, and I was just like, hey, I have this idea. And I was a little hesitant because the last time that I went to an innovation cell, at first I was very greeted with, oh my God, this is amazing. And then next thing you know, she doesn't answer her emails. And I'm like, well, I work on the flight line and I'm a staff sergeant. Like, of course I don't. Like, I don't get a chance to sit down and read my emails. And then I would get, they would email my bosses and my chiefs and they would be like, she's so irresponsible. And I'm like, no, I'm turning wrenches. Like, I don't have time to answer your emails every day, because I would email them and then like 15 minutes later they would get back to me with a response. Well, the next week, it would be a week later that I would check my email again. I know that's very bad staff sergeant, but if you've ever worked on the flight line or you've ever worked in a blue collar job in that way where you're not able to sit down and look at your email every day, you would understand. I mean, you get it.
That's not the top of the list of things. Your presence is out on the flight line.
Yeah. So, anyway, I get there and I was very hesitant just because I was afraid that they would go back and bash at me again with my leadership. And they would just be like, well, this girl doesn't know what she's doing. And I was worried about my new position and I was worried about protecting my airmen and this, that, and the third. So, I was very nervous and very scared to go, my idea has value, but I was afraid that they would just either take it or they would just brush it off. Luckily, they did not. And they were like, hey, there's this dude named Mike Williamson. Like, he's a metals tech guy by trade. He actually works with us in the office at Fighter Country Innovation, and he is absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
Like the CAD guru, if you will. So we start talking and designs are happening. He basically takes the original design and makes it better in the sense of like actual, like using structural, like I don't know. He did his mic thing and he made it like super structurally sound. And we get a few prototypes made out of plastic. And we were originally trying to get this 3D printed into plastic, but we found out the F-35 is a little heavier for plastic to adjust the nose tire. So, that's what tests are for. But, and there were some other hurdles that went along the way with like, just, is this going to get adopted? How is this going to get adopted? Is this only going to get adopted at Luke Air Force Base? And it just so happened I think it was Mike was just like, hey, there's this program called the Refinery. And it's through the AFWERX program. And I was like, what's AFWERX? Because again, when you're not boots on the ground with innovation, you don't hear about these programs.
You're not familiar. And that's what part of the whole point of this podcast is to bring to everyone that's on the flight line, bring awareness. It's like there are resources to get your ideas for your pain points and issues that you have at work. Let's solution these ideas.
I'd even go as far as not even just the flight line. Like now that I'm in this office, like every office that I come into contact with has a pain point. So if you're out there and you're listening, all, 6 viewers of us, woot woot, and you have a problem, like come to Fighter Country Innovation. This isn't strictly just for maintenance.
This is for the entire wing. Yeah.
I mean, even if you're another base and you have questions, like give us a call. Like, I don't know if they would want me to like, 856, like give out the phone number, but I can. But if you have a pain point, like, we can help you. And then if we can't help you here, Fighter Country Innovation, we can get you to an innovation cell that can. Because
we've worked with other people across bases.
Absolutely.
And in fact, we have people coming here next month from AFWERX to kind of check in on things and see, because they help other spark cells stand up, so they see how we do business, and that helps other people enhance their day-to-day, innovation efforts.
Yeah. So sorry, audience, went down a rabbit hole real fast, but we're here to help. But back to the refinery. So we're going through the refinery. I think I wear a hole in my super's office because I'm pacing back and forth going that they're not going to accept me. They're not going to accept me because there's an interview process. You had to submit a form, then an interview process to see, if this is a good fit for you. Because this is the refinery program, in my opinion, and I could be just a little biased, is by far the best program that AFWERX has. I know that they have a lot of incredible products and programs out there, but I love this program simply because they get the airmen the tools that they need to succeed. And it's not just okay, you succeeded once in this project, okay, you're done. No, these tools are transferable throughout the Air Force. And what I love about the refinery mentors and the different networks that you have is if you even have a question, they're like, what do you need help with? Who can we connect you with? All right, I don't have these answers, but I know, Staff Sergeant Bob has these answers. Not really. I don't know if there's a Bob, or if there is a Bob. Hey, Bob. But I can't sing enough praises. So anyway, I'm wearing a hole in my super's office. Oh my goodness. I want to say I was talking to DZ, but I think I don't know if I was talking to DZ or Mr. Breyer or even John. I don't remember. Anyway, they were like, okay, we'll hear back from you. And in the Air Force, it's a little nerve-wracking because when you hear back from them, you don't know if you're going to hear back from them tomorrow or 6 years from now. And anyway, a couple days later, I get an email going, congratulations, your project has been selected for the refinery program, the cohort 10. And I remember cohort 10 because it's my favorite number, and I was super excited. I was super jazzed.
That's amazing.
It was.
But to your previous point, though, sometimes, yes, hearing back from the Air Force on certain things, it is nerve-wracking because it either takes an inordinate amount of time or you never hear anything back. But when it comes to innovation in AFWERX, is they've done something different where they are on top of communication. And I think it's the culture, the way that they look at these things, they prioritize. People have things that they're trying to solve, and they are putting their energy and effort into this, so they care.
Mm-hmm. No,
and so the people in charge are like, okay, we care too. And we don't, the people in AFWERX, they recognize that, airmen, and when you put forth an idea that, like, okay, I want to be a part of this refinery, I want to, actualize this idea that I have, you don't want to wait 6 months to hear back. And they're like, oh, okay, congratulations, you're now selected for this. And then the cohort will be sometime next year. I'm like, no, I need a solution now.
Yeah. And honestly, so all this process is going through from me coming into Fighter Country Innovation to getting accepted through the refinery. This was like a year-long process. One, because I was still juggling my main priority job. So I was no longer expediting. At this point, I had moved into the role of section chief because me and my husband were trying to expand our family, and obviously I can't be around those chemicals and this, that, and the third. And so I had been moved into the section chief office. So I was a little more readily available to my email. And so that was a huge constraint. And, I think a lot of people forget that innovation is fast but slow at the same time. It's as fast as the person is able to make it, not as fast as they want to make it, because obviously everyone wants a solution right now. But being able to have the time. And that's what we do here at Fighter Country Innovation. We have a fantastic UIR program. So if you have an idea out there and you really want to work on it and hone on it, like let's get you through the UIR program. So you have almost a quarter. You have 90 days essentially to work on said project. Anyway.
For those of you listening, listen to the UIR program, episode 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. We did do a episode 2. So we go through and we're doing this program. And, you know, at this point, me and Mike, we're a team on this. Like, I refuse to go through the program without him because, you know, I mean, at this point, like, yes, I drew it on a napkin and I had the frustrations, but Mike is the one that really made this thing like become a physical project and come to life. Like, he made my napkin dream come true, basically. And so we're going out, we've already made a metal version. My leadership at the 308th AMU, shout out, let me, you know, do tests. We were able to get QA out there. We were able to figure out how long the bar needs to be, things of that nature. In the process, we were also going through the refinery program, which is a super intense program where they teach you how to cold call, how to do a 3-minute pitch, like even getting down to a one word pitch, to get your point across. And it was a very eye-opening experience. It gave me more confidence in the avionics, or not avionics, in the innovation world. And it honestly got some of my airmen really fired up, going, oh my gosh, they're actually going to adopt this. So anyway, as we get accepted into this program, like, hey, we need the name of your project type. And as a joke, they were like, it's a placeholder, don't have to make it permanent, but we just need a name. And one of my coworkers was like, hey, you should just name it Tabby. And I was just thinking, okay, this is a placeholder, but like they're going to ask what Tabby means. So we were racking our brains and I was like, tire alignment, breaker, bar. Dang, what's a word for a Y? And I actually remember Sergeant Archer was like, it's yoke. And I was like, okay, yoke. So Tabby ended up being submitted, and
so it's literally called the Tabby Tool.
The Tabby Tool. And then of course one of my airmen was like, it's like a Tabby kit, like Tabby cat. And I was like, go sit in a corner, like I'm done with you. But it was funny. So fast forward even further, we are in DC, and with the refinery, what they do is after you go through, certain projects are able to go to the Pentagon and actually brief the big dogs. And I was very fortunate and blessed that our cohort was able to go through and go to the Pentagon. Don't know why they let me release through there, but I had the fortunate pleasure to actually run into our new chief of staff. And he was like, well, tell me about your idea. This is exciting. And I was like, oh gosh, this is the second time I've actually briefed the chief of staff, because the first time I briefed him, or a different chief of staff, was when I was in Hawaii. I made an air-to-air interrogation rigging system for the F-22. Again, I had PTSD from previous spark cells, but you know, it's still there in Hawaii. So I'm telling him about this idea, and my other cohort members are telling him about their idea. He's lighting up. He's excited. You know, we're briefing generals, colonels, and they're all very excited about seeing these innovations come through. And I wish I could. There's just so many amazing projects that went through cohort 10. You had the lily pads, the F-35 lily pads. You had the comm box. You had fire department, you know, with safeties with the F-35 and creating an external shutdown system. You had Project Gravel. I'm just trying to rack my brain on how many there were. There were so many amazing projects. They had the large language model version. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I could spend hours on this, and I know we don't have hours. So we go through the refinery. They let us talk to the Pentagon people. And it's just an experience. So then when you get back to your base, that's when boots really hit the ground running. We're getting emails, we're getting calls, we're getting all these different things going, hey, we want your tool. So then with vision, AFWERX came up with this vision, and now we're able to submit our ideas and tools, and it's a little bit easier connection. And
you're talking about the site vision.
The site vision. Mm-hmm.
So just for the audience out there, vision is a let's say it's a collection site of innovative ideas that connect people across. Is it just the DAF or is it DoD wide?
I want to say it's just the DAF, but also I want to say DoD members just in general have access to it.
So vision is what it's called, and the ideas get submitted up in there with members who the owners of the ideas are, some descriptions of what it entails, what it solves, and the progress of the project.
Mm-hmm. So me and Mike get home from our TDY, you know, and we kind of hit a standstill on the Tabby kit. One, we're kind of redesigning and adding, you know, the Tabby kit 2.0, and then, you know, there was another issue. We were working with our JPO to possibly integrate this to multiple airframes, and then Mike had a fantastic idea, which we cleverly named the Mike as well. So we have the Mike and the Tabby. I can't remember for the life of me. I think it's like manual insertion key element or something like that. If I remember right, I think that's what the Mike stands for. So,
we do love our acronyms.
We do. But it was, it kind of got to hit a standstill. So we ended up hitting a standstill because of legal purposes when it came to the patent. So our patent attorney that the Air Force had, you know, advised us to go to, told us, hey, like, we have to withhold the information as far as getting this out to the general public, the Air Force public, if you will, until it's protected. Because we do work closely with Lockheed Martin. Not saying that they would ever take it, but at the same time, legally, I want to make sure that our airmen are able to use this tool and not have to buy this tool for, you know, $1.4 million.
Exactly. And it's better if it is protected.
Mm-hmm. Specifically for the Air Force and my airmen. Like, I don't want to make a dime off of this. Like, I want my airmen to have an easier time than me having to drag this stupid tow bar a quarter of a mile just to change a nose tire. So anyway, we kind of hit a standstill on that, which was a little frustrating, but also I understood the legalities of it. And we had just, I want to say a few months ago. Yeah, because this was right before I had given birth. So we had gotten the green light, and obviously at that point I was pregnant, so I was juggling other things in my life. So we had gotten the green light just to release the Tabby for DoD members only. Which, by the way, if you're out there listening and you need the Tabby kit, I swear the drawings are coming to you as soon as possible. But we ended up getting the green light from our patent lawyer. Me and Mike are currently going to be finishing up the local man paperwork, authorizing it to be used at Luke Air Force Base. And once it's authorized here at Luke Air Force Base, we're going to go ahead and just send the local man paperwork out to the other bases at the F-35s. And then we're also going to do slight modifications to it and use it for the F-22 community if they're interested. F-16 community, pretty much anything that has a nose tire, if they want to use it and has a connection point, that's what we want to try to use it for. So this way we can make a universal tool for any airframe if they need to change a nose tire. And it is just
then it would be the Tabby Au,
right? But it's just one of those. Overall, innovation can be frustrating. Getting the ideas and finding those pain points are frustrating. And it's okay to have all those feels, but you need to understand, like, even if you come to a very slow crawl, even if you're making small steps towards the direction, don't give up on your ideas. Don't give up on the innovation. Because ultimately the success is just to get it out there and get it to the people. And so, yeah.
So during that whole process, you're going through the design phase, you're going through the bureaucratic red tape just to get this thing approved and then used. What kept you going?
Frustration and seeing my airmen's frustration. It was incredibly empowering. Like I said, going back to the original story when my airmen were like, hey, how do you not know this? Like, you're a tech sergeant. And I'm like, I'm learning. Like, tech school, I didn't go to F-35 tech school, and what was in the 7-level CDCs was the F-35 is a stealth gray fighter. Thank you. Like, and
Wheels on the bus story.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to be a technical expert in something that I've never worked on? How am I supposed to be a technical expert on something that I never even was able to study? And, we all know theory, is written one way, but then the system operates in a completely different way. So it just goes back to the beginning of the story, of seeing my airmen really rally behind me and help me become the tech sergeant that I've become. And I am so appreciative of them. I owe everything to my airmen and, my great leadership and my leadership that gave me the opportunities and saw my potential that I had to in this particular airframe. And I think that's what kept me going is
the support
that I had, which not everyone has that exciting Air Force success story. I didn't have that as much in my younger career. I didn't necessarily have that in my mid-grade career. And I'm sure, Lord willing, when I'm a senior NCO, I don't know if I'm going to have that as well. But I know that I had it then, and I know that I have it now. And I know that not everyone has that, and that makes me sad that innovation can get stifled because people don't want things to change. Like it's always the same.
Yeah.
So,
but things are changing to where we are a central location for people to come for innovation, and we are your advocates.
Mm-hmm.
So we will advocate for anyone who has an idea, who wants to actualize on that idea. Yes, there is effort that you have to put in to see your idea go from whatever it is that you have in your head and, actualize it.
Mm-hmm.
But we are here to support everybody in that.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that I can ask people that do have an idea, make sure you stay flexible. Innovation is a living, breathing organism, if you will. And if you are so rigid in your idea that you're not willing to bend or move or work around the red tape, the idea is going to die. And I hate for people's ideas to die because their idea is special. We just have to make sure that we're able to get that special idea out there, and you may have to bend in order to get it out there.
Yeah. Sometimes you may not know exactly what the solution is going to look like, but you know that there needs to be a solution for it. And that's where the flexibility comes in, is that you shift and you pivot according to however it needs to look in order to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, if you guys have any questions, we're at Building 219 at Luke Air Force Base, down the ALS hallway in the library. And we're here for you, Monday through Friday.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Technical Sergeant Tabitha Au with the Tabby Tool, a success story, a recent success story, and this is a phenomenal tool that is going to help out the entire F-35 program. And hopefully other people will be able to use it on future aircraft as well. Do you have any closing remarks for the audience?
No, not really. Just stay bold and innovative.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Fighter Country Innovation Podcast, where we break down barriers, challenge the status quo, and drive real change together. Do you have an idea, feedback, or a story to share? We want to hear from you. So reach out, stay connected, and become part of the innovation movement. Remember, find, fix, empower. Keep pushing forward, keep moving, and we'll see you next time on the FCI podcast.